BDSM and non-standard relationships,
power exchange and polyamory,
sacred sexuality and fetishes, as well as simply fun kink.
You're listening to the Erotic Awakening Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Femdom Mystique, and today I am going to surprise you with a wonderful guest. It's going to be my second interview ever with my dear friend, Mistress Servalan from Sydney, Australia. Now, before I start interviewing her, I have to tell you guys, this is one of my favorite ladies ever.
Oh, thank you.
She's wonderful, she's beautiful, and we have so many similar interests, and I am going to give her some questions that will hopefully entertain you and titillate you for the second installment of the Mistress Interviews. So I'm going to introduce my guest, Mistress Servalan. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mistress Simone. This is my first podcast interview, so I'm very excited to be part, and obviously the Femdom Mystique is something that's very dear to my heart as a concept, and I'm very happy to be able to give my perspective on female domination and also professional domination and professional mistressing and what that means to me. So please ask away any questions.
First of all, I'd like to talk about something that we mentioned yesterday during the DDI photography session, and we had brought up the concept of sisterhood. Can you expound a little bit about what that means to you?
Well, what it means to me is that, I guess on a really top-line level is just the feeling that that all women should, I guess, have each other's backs, that we should support each other and not be in competition. I think sometimes femininity is constructed around the idea that women are competing against each other for a scarce resource, aka men. But, they're not really that scarce.
They're not that scarce. They're not that scarce.
and on a femdom level, it can be that we're competing for subs, and on a professional level that we're competing for clients. But I always say that that it's always more successful by having a sense of sisterhood and being part of a team and realizing that there's no competition, that for every dom there's a sub, and whether it's professionally, personally, or whatever, there's always going to be people who are attracted to a different energy. You don't have to be comparing yourself to anyone else, because you're not, I'm not comparing myself to you, because people who are attracted to you as a domina are going to see you, and people who are attracted to me are going to see me, and people who think, oh wow, they're both amazing, will come and see us together, which is even better.
Hint, boys, come see us both together. She's going to come to Chicago, and I'm going back to Australia sometime soon. Hubby's making me. He's like, we have to go back.
Amazing. So yeah, it's just, and it's also about supporting each other and the ways in which we can share knowledge and information and just provide support if someone needs help, or if they just need to ask a question or feel that they're not going to be judged or competed with, that they don't have to be looking over their shoulder. And I think sometimes there's a perspective that we're like really bitchy and difficult and catty.
Catty, correct.
I don't think that that's true at all. Most dominant ladies and a lot of subs have told me this as well, that we're like the most kind and friendly people. We just happen to like, hitting boys with sticks.
Which you do so well. We'll get to your specialties. I agree with you, and I do think that we need to support each other and work together to facilitate communication and camaraderie. There is no reason for us to compete with each other. Because like you said, what attracts one submissive to you is going to attract to you and may not to me. So there's plenty of submissives to go around, and even if there's not, that's not the point of this. It's to support each other. Do you find there is a difference between American networking of DOMs and international networking of DOMs? Is there more infighting here that you've seen, more drama, or do you think...
I think it's probably the same everywhere, to be honest. I think that every community forms its little eddies and backwaters, and different areas. My experience has always been that when you go to a city that's not your city, people are always more excited to see you, obviously, than they are when it's like, oh yeah, we see her everywhere. And also, I think that that people who are a little more insecure around their, if we're talking professionally or even in the community, a little more insecure are going to be a little bit more nervous about someone that's in their hometown. But I've always found, if you come with a I guess like an open heart and you're really enthusiastic to meet people, then people always respond with that same energy back to you.
Agree.
And that's been my experience, that people are always really, really open and excited and happy to meet me, and I am, because that's how I feel.
Wonderful.
Oh,
I was going to say.
Thank you.
That's because you're wonderful. In regards to Sisterhood, what are you actively doing yourself to facilitate that perspective?
I think in a way, a lot of what I do is more just, well, I guess there's two ways in which I've done that. I mean, I've trained, well, one other professional lady who's developed her own standing and her own reputation, Mistress Jadis. She was my apprentice.
Wonderful.
Probably
your training shows. She's a natural.
Probably 9 years ago now. She's been since she first picked up the mantle, as it were. And she was interviewed in the Sydney Morning Herald and actually had her photograph on the front page of the Spectrum section. And I was really proud.
You were proud.
I was like, oh my goodness. And so
she grew up. Look.
I know. I kept calling her my apprentice for so many years, but obviously now she's a colleague and someone that I'm very proud of. So that's something that makes me really happy, that I was part of training and giving someone a career. Really, it's just an amazing thing. And then to be able to,
it's going to feel very satisfying.
Yeah, and she's got her own
how well she's
style.
doing.
Exactly. And that she's very respected in the industry, and she, is obviously a successful mistress, and has developed her own style, which is very different to mine. And I have a new apprentice who's been with me for a bit more than 6 months, and so she's doing Miss Atreides, and she's
beautiful lady
going through she's going through the hard yards of the apprenticeship of having to receive the implements and do the exams, and all the way that I train is very old-fashioned and very specific. And so that's really nice to be able to give that to someone else, and to give them my knowledge, and my knowledge as a professional, as well as my technical knowledge as a top, as well as my personal beliefs in regards to femdom and about the DS relationships and how to manage them, both in a personal level and in a professional level. So that's one level. And then a lot of it is also just my friendships with amazing ladies like yourself.
Oh, thank you.
And it's just really, cool to me to think that there are so many people around the world that I've met, either through my travels or their travels, or just through the online communities. We were talking privately before about Max Fish, about how, about, 5 or 10 years ago, it was an amazing community, and it's kind of, like a lot of message boards, the popularity's decreased, and
they've gone by the wayside
a little bit. We're hoping to bring it back.
Yes,
and
it was a valuable community
amazing.
resource, and we had a great time. It was a great way to connect and get to know each other, and communicate.
And a lot of
need
people
that.
Exactly, and that's the thing that's amazing about having those resources. When I first started playing, it was in the 90s, and we didn't have the internet.
No, we didn't.
The internet was there, but it was mostly engineering students talking to each other.
Yes.
It wasn't open to everyone.
It wasn't even close to what it is today. There was no FetLife. There was no Facebook.
No.
There was no Twitter.
I mean, I was on a mailing list called BDSM, and there was some amazing, Uncle Abdul, the earliest electro educator, was on the Australian list because for some reason, so I knew him. But it's just been a chance to meet people online. And what I always want to do is really promote people that I know, and just always have a sense of that sense of sisterhood, that
Mm-hmm.
if someone's going to be going to Chicago and I see any questions anywhere, I'll recommend people that I know, like yourself, or
Thank you.
we have a mutual friend, Maya Sinstress,
Yes, we do.
who I'll recommend, or if they're going to New York or LA. There's all people that I know, and I can say, no, she's really ethical, she's very skilled. You can look at her photos and just decide for yourself, because I obviously think my friends are beautiful, but, you know.
Thank you. We think you're beautiful.
Everyone has their own things that they look for.
Correct.
But then I also believe that if you're looking for a dominant lady, you shouldn't be judging her by her appearance. Like, a fetish model is an amazing, gorgeous woman,
Mm-hmm.
but a fetish model is not the same as a domina.
Correct.
And a lady who's doing a few little things here and there on the side might be perfect if your interests line up with hers, but it's very different to a classically trained mistress with many years of experience. So
Correct.
it's all about finding what's right as a submissive, what's right for you, and
The good fit.
and who you connect with.
And that's a big
Most of
thing.
all.
The connection, the energy is a very big part of what you need to seek for in choosing a mistress.
Definitely.
Do you find, I want to touch on what you mentioned there, do you find, and try not to make the question derogatory, do you find that the field of dominas has been diluted in the last few years with other areas of the sex work industry coming in and either trying to piggyback or work within our context, such as the fetish models who do an occasional session, or the escorts, you know, the hookers with a whip that we call them. So do you feel that sorry guys, Doctor Who is not coming to the podcast. So do you find that has changed how people approach us or what they're looking for in sessions?
It's an interesting question. I honestly believe that people have been complaining, I'm doing air quotes, which you can't see, about this since the earliest days of domination. I think that in the pre-internet era, people didn't really know what was going on. They didn't know who was who. And so I refer to them as crossover ladies.
That's a great way to say crossover ladies.
You provide a crossover between traditional sex work and professional domination. And I'm in a very...
Crossover ladies, I like that.
I'm in a very different market because sex work has been decriminalised in New South Wales. So
I wish we would do that here.
There's no problem. So some people, I have a friend who's I refer to her as a fetish courtesan. So, and she's done a lot of training with Touching Base, which is an organisation that provides sex work for people with disabilities. And she's
wow, wonderful.
And she does a lot of that as a fetish as a fetish worker, but you know, it might include all different sorts of sexual content as well. But she was trained old school in a house of domination in Melbourne, and went through the formal apprenticeship. So she's better trained than a lot of people who are professional mistresses who don't provide any sexual services. But it's all about you know, who the clients are attracted to. The main thing I have not a problem with, but I just find sometimes people can be quite uneducated about what's going to happen in session. And I have a saying that came from a sub of mine many years ago, that's the difference between kinky sex and sexy kink.
Oh, very nice quote.
So kinky sex is great and it's fun, and I'm sure a lot of us have that in our personal lives, but it's not the same as sexy kink, which is what happens in a professional BDSM session. So it's not all about rushing to the orgasm.
Correct.
It's about the process and everything that happens. I find that, in a way, working in a decriminalised environment means that the fetish escorts are able to say that's what they are without the fear of legal repercussions.
Correct.
And the classical dominers are able to say that's what they are without people thinking, is that what she really means?
Right.
So my experience has been that it's probably quite different. in a way, I've seen in Australia, since one of the main houses that had been open for 28 years closed.
So that's
Salon Kitties.
Yes,
yeah.
that's a shame.
It was very sad, but that we saw a rush of kind of lighter erotic clients kind of looking around for somewhere to go.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And what came into that vacuum was the escorts who were willing to, pick up a riding crop and dress up in boots and provide that sort of service. I say, good for them. If they're
each
feeling,
their own.
Exactly. And, I feel that, again, it's the sisterhood. It's like I don't compete with sex workers. I don't have any problem with any other part of the sex industry. No. If people are, it's like if people are buying porn, I think, well, that's good because some lady's making good money off
that. Good for her, right?
Exactly. That's how I feel. I mean, I don't personally identify as a sex worker, and I know that that's quite contentious.
It is, because I don't either. And it's been brought to my attention, well, yes, you are, but that's not how I identify.
Exactly.
I'm a classically trained domina.
And
it's not about the kinky sex. It's about the sexy kink, which I love that, and the journey and how you get there.
And also for me, I think the difference is that I would classify myself as an ex-sex worker because when I worked in a house, it was more of an environment where the client comes in, he meets, does the whole meeting 5 ladies, and we all have a quick chat, and then he says, I want to see this person. Yeah. And then we do what he's asked for. Right. And that is, to me, while there's no sex involved, there's no, oral sex or things like that, it's still sex work because you're providing an erotic service based on what someone has asked for and you're fulfilling their fantasy.
Correct. You have the menus. And so it's run very
we didn't
similar
have a menu
to... That's what we have here is...
Oh, no, we don't have that.
This woman to do this and that, and
then
the cost is based on that.
Yeah, similar, but we didn't have the kind of actual menu. That's a bit like, it's bad enough lining up with all the other
I would like some French fries with that. And,
I know.
Supersize it.
Somewhere else where they say, would you like sex with that? Not where I worked, another establishment, and a friend of mine who was there was just like,
okay,
I don't think this is for me. But, so... Sorry, you were going to ask me.
I was going to ask you, let's talk a little bit about you.
Mm-hmm, all right. Sure.
When did you get started? And a little bit about your history.
Okay.
And what you like to do.
What I like to do? I like to do lots of things.
Everything. We can't say everything.
All the things. Well, I've been a professional mistress since very early in 2000. So it'd be coming up to 15 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. Team tenure down. I love that.
Yeah, it's cool. And before then, I was involved in the BDSM community for officially probably 5 years before that. So I kind of count my first official induction into the community when I went to my first to the Hellfire Club, which has been running in Sydney for about 22 years.
That would be a good starting point.
And I went to the opening night, and I knew before then that I was interested in different things. I've been a fetishist all my life, as long as I can remember. I've always been a fetishist, and when I was a young girl growing up, I knew that my fantasies were quite different from other people's. I've always been a fetishist, and I've always been a sadist, and so these things, or sadist as you say here.
It's okay. I love the way you say things, so don't change it.
So that's always been who I am. That's always been part of my... it's even more complicated than your sexuality. It's not just about...
It's not just about that.
It's
who you are.
Erotic,
it's your heart. It's your energy.
And that's always been there for me. Possibly even more than being dominant. It's like the pain and the fetishism. So they've always been part of me. And when I discovered the BDSM community and realised that... it was actually before then, a few years before, when I discovered that such a thing as BDSM was a thing. It was such a huge relief.
Felt like you belonged.
It just felt like I wasn't a bad person.
Okay.
Because if you're 14 years old and you're like fantasizing and spending special time with yourself when you're starting to experience your sexuality, and you're thinking about you know, these blood and these really dark fantasies, and otherwise you're like, who the hell am I?
All right, it can be very scary.
All the other
feel
girls,
there's something wrong.
All the other girls want to like kiss pop stars, and
I
want
never
to
did
like
that either.
and I want to like, you know.
I understand. I never did that either.
And before you know about BDSM and about all the safe ways in which we can get to this place with each other, with the dom and the sub and the energy exchange flowing between us, before you know that exists and you're just having a horrible fantasy about, you know, kneecappings or something. Like I was obsessed with the IRA. And
interesting.
Like weird little obsessions that you have when you're like a 14-year-old, 14, 15-year-old girl.
Probably the uniforms and the interrogation and the torture
interrogation and the torture and the resistance.
Right.
So, yeah.
My heroes growing up were comic book characters. Like Wonder Woman.
Oh, I love
Catwoman, you know, all the outfits and the controlling the men and the tying them up, and so I'm there with you.
Where my name came from, Servalan, which came from a BBC science fiction drama. You're a Doctor Who fan, so you know about the glory days. From I think it was from the 70s, and she was the chief baddie, and she used to flounce around outer space in these like ball gowns and torture people, and there was always this kind of sexual tension with the torture, and she was the way that
great.
He would say Servalan, and it was like.
That's my name.
And I just thought, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to like look glamorous and torture people.
And look, you do.
I know.
It's amazing. I'm actually going to write an article coming up about how many of us dominas have beginnings in things like popular culture that inspire us, that, you know, we have these dark thoughts, we have these alternative fantasies, and we see things like Doctor Who or comic books and go, that's me. And that's what I want to do.
The archetypes that resonate for us.
Exactly. And we don't even realize it until later. And we look back and go, oh, that explains it.
Yeah, definitely. Though for me, a lot of my early memories are like the smell of leather. And like I had a leather watch strap and I used to sniff it a lot. And just little things like that, and tie things really tightly around my waist. And I, as a fetishist, it's like I knew that, you know, if my fantasies weren't being sadistic, then a lot of the times they were just about, not even about a sexual interaction with another person necessarily, but just about what I was wearing and like the shoes, like the shape. Well, how the sensation of how your arch curves when it's pushed into a particular. And you do research on these things and you discover, oh, that's because that's the shape that people's feet go into when they're having an orgasm. But but just that pressure and, you know. And stockings and
we could spend hours on all of our
archetypes of fetishism. But I'm a fetishist. Like I would, you know, there are times where, you know, the outfit is possibly more important than the activity.
The activity.
It's just all about that, and that's my personal, you know, my personal sexuality, as well as not something that I really do professionally, because professionally it's a more removed, but.
Right,
even though I still enjoy it, and it's like just a moment when you're just standing there like that and feeling the sensation of like whether it's satin or latex or leather or whatever. It's just like that little moment, and
where you go, ooh,
and your eyes are like a little bit half
closed,
and you're just like, oh, that's really good.
Yes. John watches me do that all the time. He's like, "Are you enjoying that, honey?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am." So fetishism. If I had to make you choose, what would be your number one fetish?
My primary fetish?
Not activity.
Yes,
but
exactly.
The thing that gets your sexuality really rolling. If you want to tell my listeners.
No, it's hard. It would either be, in a way, probably blood.
Okay.
Like the smell of blood and the sight of it, and that was kind of one of the and leather, and a lot of them for me it's all about the smell of things. So leather has a really particular aroma.
It does.
Leather, and also, and as I said though, blood, like not necessarily the caning or the cutting or the piercing, but just the blood itself.
I'm there with you on that
and
one.
The smell of it and the sight of it and the layers and layers of meaning of what it means for someone. Part of it's the Diaz connection, that someone's bleeding for you, for your pleasure.
Correct.
Even like taboo things, like my own blood, like menstrual blood, any kind of blood, it's all kind of good.
I don't disagree with you on that. Well, it has a primal aspect.
Very much so.
It triggers the primal sensations in our brain for pain or pleasure.
And the same,
arousal.
I think, with leather as well. It's
the
like
cowhide, the skin, the animal.
Yeah, the skinness of it, which is terrible in a way because I've been a vegetarian for 30 years and I'm like a leather fetishist. I'm like, oh, just don't ask.
But you admit it, you own it, you're there.
Exactly.
So, fetishism aside, activity-based. What would you say your specialties are?
I have 3 favorite things.
These are my 3 favorite things.
3 favorites that I've actually narrowed it all down to, and it would be bondage, corporal punishment, and cross-dressing.
Okay.
Which might
You surprised me with the last one.
I love cross-dressing.
Well, I know you do, but I thought you were going to say blood play and medical.
No,
she knows
I'm
one
not
of
a
mine.
medical
Which is one of mine.
At all.
That's wonderful.
I'm not a medical fetishist.
I knew the first 2.
I love bondage. And bondage is not something that's so... it's not such a visceral, personal, like, high for me. That corporal punishment is. I mean...
definitely.
Mistress Simone has observed me giving someone a very heavy caning, and you can see that my pupils are dilated, and I'm like laughing. And
it was like, wonderful.
I'm flying as much as the sub. Well, maybe not quite as much, but
we do get a similar high when we do a heavy caning or heavy corporal
with the energy connection. And bondage is not so much about that. Bondage is just for me, it makes me very happy and it's very calming. And I really love extreme restriction, and I like building and layering and going from one piece. And I like device bondage. I mean, I'm not really
That's
into...
the thing with me. I love the... Bondage to me is for creativity.
Yes.
Let's see what I can come up with today. How many layers can I incorporate?
Exactly.
How restricted can I get with you? And unusual ways of doing it.
And that's something I find that with the current obsession with Japanese rope bondage, that people feel, oh, it's so creative and artistic. But this is a contentious opinion. I don't think it is.
I agree.
You see the same 10 ties, 5 or 10 ties over and over and over again. And it might look really beautiful. It might be a gorgeous, petite bondage model. And it might be lit really beautifully, and she's got this, fake orgasm face on, and she looks beautiful. And it's gorgeous, but
how many of those have we seen?
Exactly, and the ties are all the same, and people are going to rope dojos, and they're being trained, and this is a new phenomenon that's popped up in the last 3 years.
It's very new.
And people are acting as if it's like, but Moses on the mountaintop gave out the bondage laws. And that's not actually one of my mentors, Mistress Erika Sakuri, who you would have known because she was in the United States as well. She was trained by one of the original bondage masters from the 60s, and she said to me that she was given, these are the basic things, off you go and develop your own style.
Not the Bible and
not
that's being presented nowadays.
And everyone's learning.
The one true way.
I know. I'm a bit like that with the one true way of caning.
Well, we are, all right. Yes.
But
and play piercing. Yeah.
But people have this idea that they have to learn to tie this, and they learn all the Japanese names for all these different things, and then they reproduce them one after the other. But my style of bondage is not about that, because it's about working with the body in front of you and the needs of that person and the equipment. And I love gear. We
are both gear whores. I think most of us in the more experienced, longer length, we love gear. We definitely love our gear.
And that's one of the things that, I think I had someone saying to me who's been playing with me, I've got a lot of subs that have been seeing me for my entire career.
Which is wonderful because you develop a relationship and a rapport.
Exactly. And people who's been, who sees me for multi-day sessions and has been seeing me for more than 10 years says, oh, your style's changed so much, Mistress. You used to do more rope and now you use a lot more different devices. And I said, I was poor then. I hadn't bought as much gear. All I had was
I had like
gear. 5 pieces of rope, which is obviously not really the truth. But,
the longer we are in
good
this,
dungeon
more...
furniture is expensive, so you're always buying new pieces.
It's very expensive.
Each year that it passes, you might spend, $5K here and $10K there, and after 10 years, you've got well over $100,000 worth of gear,
which is fun to insure. At least here in the States.
Yeah. So it's very, fun to be able to use all those things. And that's where the creativity comes in, because you're not doing the same 5 ties over and over again, because you're not tying. You're like petite little young ladies who are super flexible. You're tying regular humans and, you're...
Some have issues, some have bad knees, bad backs.
Your 200-pound guy is very different from your 100-pound lady who's very flexible. Right. So a lot of what we do, I think, is about working with that body. And as we were saying, the layering is what's cool. It's like using the bondage furniture, and then there's the body restrictions. So you might have latex catsuit, and then you'll have arm binder, the opera.
Stop! You're getting me hot.
And the leg braces, and then
I gotta go home and play now.
And then you have them on the inversion rack, and then you'll do saran wrap over the top of that, and then you'll do rope over the top of that, and that's
the fun.
Yeah,
that's the creativity.
The restrictiveness and the creativity and the aesthetics of making it look beautiful. Which at the end of the day, I'm a super visual person, and I'm a visual person, and I'm a fetishist, and I just want everything to look really beautiful, and to, even if the slave can't see it, for me there's so much, and that's the love of bondage, so much satisfaction in looking at that and going, oh,
I did that.
That's really hot.
So let's start wrapping things up a little bit. I want to know, you mentioned earlier about Diaz relationships. If you had to give one piece of advice for a beginning mistress about Diaz relationships, what would it be?
I would say never forget that both people are equal.
Agree.
That just
humans first.
Yeah. And just because you've negotiated a DS relationship doesn't make you better than the sub, because we're two sides of the same coin. If you don't, you're still a dom if you don't have a sub, of course. But the relationship, the DS relationship, has to have both parties involved in it, and I think it's important to negotiate but just to have that level of mutual respect, even if the relationship that's negotiated means that you can like throw things on the floor and scream because it's all wrong.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you don't run.
Someone's taking a nap. She got a very good caning, so someone's taking a nap.
But it doesn't mean that you don't respect that person as a person.
I think you need to respect that person
and value them.
Because why do I want someone who I don't value and I don't respect? Because I never understood the whole my submissive is garbage, lower than floor mat. I've never understood that, because I don't want a floor mat. I want a person who I can communicate.
I like valuable
possessions.
Valuable possessions.
Right,
whether
it's like,
a designer bag or my like huge collection of Louboutins. It's like
exactly. I love valuable slaves.
Vintage jewelry and beautiful things that I want in my life. I want to have valuable people as friends, and valuable people as submissives, and just to surround myself with things that are high value and beautiful and that make me happy. And like a piece of garbage is not something that I want in my life.
I don't want it in my life. I agree 100% with you on that. So some fun questions. What's your favorite TV show currently?
Maybe Kimmy Schmidt, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, because that cracks me up. Otherwise, I like Game of Thrones, and I like all sorts of things.
What do you think of the current Doctor Who?
I haven't been watching it. I'm sorry.
It's okay, neither have I. I'm like way behind. It's okay. What is your favorite possession in your dungeon?
Oh.
And I don't mean the slaves.
My favorite possession would probably be my, I would say the senior dragon cane that I bought at Fetid Pleasures when they were still open in London.
Mm-hmm.
Either that or the, I have a really beautiful Mike Murphy bullwhip that was given to me by a really precious slave of mine who is sadly, no longer with us. But he gave me that, and it was funny because people would be like, "Oh my God, why would you give her something that she's going to hit you with?" And he's like, "Because she wanted it, and it makes her so happy."
And she's going to hit me with it, which then makes her happy.
Exactly.
So, if someone was going to come see you for a session, what would they need to do?
They just need to email me. I always say people just need to have saved up their pennies and be polite. I'm happy to. I see novices. I see very experienced people. As long as we have enough interests in common. They don't have to like everything that I like.
Correct.
They don't have to be terrified that they'll come in the door and I'll bullwhip their balls and, unless...
I get that a lot too. It's all about...
It's about they have to be interested in serving me and being my possession, even if it's only for an hour.
That's a great way to put it, and I think that's wonderful.
Giving up. And I say that a session in the dungeon is like, a long-term DS relationship is like a Shakespeare play with drama and so many things happening and really beautiful and amazing. But a 1-hour session is like a haiku. It's like each line is perfect and it all fits together and it is a complete thing of itself. It might only be short, but it's perfect and it's no less valuable than that, Shakespeare play.
Correct. That's a wonderful way to put things.
But it is what it is, and it's a perfect, intense little moment that we share together.
And I thank you for sharing this moment with me.
Oh, you're welcome.
And we never get to hang out enough.
I know, it's terrible. That's the whole curse of that's the bad side of sisterhood, that you find these people you connect with really amazingly, and then
I don't get to see
her.
So
far.
So how do people get in touch with you if they would like to set up a session or get in touch with you?
Well, it's always good to follow me on Twitter because I share a lot of my information there and lots of thoughts on domination and excitement about play and photos here and there. And my Twitter handle is Ms. Servalan, which is MSSERVALAN. Or you can always just go to my website, which is mistressservalan.com. So Mistress SERVALAN.com.
Perfect. And again, I thank you very much for spending this little bit of time with us and spending some time with me at DomCon. It was wonderful.
I know. It's been fabulous. So good to see you again.
Yeah. Well, thank you, listeners. I hope you enjoyed the time with one of my dear friends, Mistress Servalan, and sharing her thoughts. Possibly we will have her back again because I didn't get to answer or ask her most of the things I wanted to.
I too busy just gossiping.
Yeah, I was going to say I could talk to you for hours. So enjoy that, and please feel free to, if you are in Australia or traveling to Australia or she's here in the States, you have to see her. So this has been Femdom Mystique, and thank you very much, listeners.